Okay, so let's go with Jeff Heiselmeyer, National Account Executive at Saia. Jeff has many, many moons of experience under his belt, and he's the perfect guest for this chat, titled The Future of LTL Shipping. Hello, Jeff. How you doing today, bud? Do we have Jeff? Okay, perhaps not. Okay, well, we'll
Hello,
wait.
testing.
Oh, there
How's
he
that?
is.
There I am.
There's Mr. Jeff. How are you today, my friend?
It's that pesky unmute button that gets me every time. I'm doing well. Good morning to you and everybody else. Welcome from Pennsylvania.
Excellent, excellent. We're glad to have you here today. Jeff's from Saia, one of the largest LTL carriers nationwide through our country. And again, we're going to be talking about the future of LTL shipping. And Jeff, I'm just going to roll right into our first question here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What are the most common operative issues that are happening and affecting the overall customer satisfaction? There's a good one for you.
Well, suffice it to say, you're probably going to hear me say the word capacity about 500 times during the next 20 minutes. But interestingly enough, when you take a look at the supply chain is largely dysfunctional right now. I think we all can agree to that. And it's just been a combination of things. Goodness, coming out of Q1 and a little bit into Q2, we were dealing with the weather. Dan, you had mentioned that I've been doing this for about 4 years now. I've been in operations for about 20 years, and I've been in sales and sales management an equal amount of time. And when I say that weather that we had in the U.S. in the first quarter was like anything, I have never seen anything so protracted, and it just wouldn't let up. And the impact of that with, oftentimes people will not realize that the LTL industry is very much like the air industry, where we have drivers positioned and we have equipment positioned. And the fact that it took the LTL industry weeks and weeks and weeks to recover, largely already exacerbated an issue that was that had presented itself with capacity to start with. So, when you, granted, the weather is the weather issues over the dam is water over the dam.
Well, you're right.
Yeah, we have the COVID issue, which impacted capacity, and then certainly you have the capacity issue, which I'll be really glad to talk about, and the impact that it's had on the LTL segment as a whole.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the weather thing, because it's something I wanted to bring up, that and a lot of customers do this, and when they say when like somebody will report, where's my freight, and it's impacted due to the weather that was a week ago, and the customer would be like, wait, it snowed a week ago. Why isn't my freight delivered yet? And the big problem with that is, as far as operating issues go, it just the logistics of moving freight to a inundated terminal, or from an inundated terminal that's been impacted by an event like a huge snowstorm, will last over a week or more.
Easily. Yeah, absolutely. Because you have to try, you can't allow the inventory to continue to build and build and build as it relates to, and because that's what specifically we saw in some of our larger metropolitan terminals that were impacted by weather. The people were picking freight up and it just got to a point where we had to say no mas. We had to manage the business, the volume, the best that we could, until we could get the freight flow back to normal.
Right, and clearing up the choke points, because it's not just the front end terminal or the end line terminal that's affected by it. It's everything in between as well.
Yep.
And people need to realize that, because again, when you let a customer know that due to the weather, it's not because it's snowing right this minute. It's because it snowed a week and a half ago, and the supply chain is all messed up because of that.
Yeah, and you know what, Dan, that's a great point, because one of the things that as an industry collectively we need to do is we need to make sure we're communicating this, because we need to manage the customer's expectations, because things continue to be dysfunctional. Things are not normal. Um, Goodness knows every carrier is trying to return to normal the quickest they can. But to the earlier presentation, looking into the crystal ball, you just don't know when it's going to improve to the point that people are doing largely what they say they were going to do, and the value props of all the carriers return to where they were a year and a half ago.
You're right. You're right. And so, besides the weather, and of course the unfortunate COVID incident, which is not a common operative issue, anything else that you can think off the top of your head? Like, what about? It's hard to find not drivers, but dock workers too. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
let's go
yeah,
there. Let's
yeah, yeah.
go. Even just general labor, finding to
It's
try to supply a terminal. It's crazy.
right now, and again, Saia is not exclusive. This is a fight that every single solitary carrier has, not just carriers, but I mean, everybody's looking for help. Right now, we have an excess of 800 open requisitions for help across the
Wow.
company.
Wow. And that's
And
from A to Z, right? That's all.
that's a combination of drivers. The way the mix was, the last I heard, it was 500 drivers and 300 dock workers.
Wow.
And
You could solve the unemployment issues for some of the small states right there.
yeah, it truly is unique. And what is also unique, talking about help, is that we find it very regional in nature. Um,
Of
the,
course.
the the issue that we're having specifically is that in the Northeast, in the Mid-Atlantic, where we've recently expanded, and the Southeast, into to a large degree, the Central Southeast, if you will, we're not having any issues getting applicants, and we're working real hard to fill those open requisitions we have. But as it relates to what we're experiencing, if you head out into Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, to a lesser degree, Ohio and Kentucky, we can't even get applicants. We can't even get applicants to interview.
Wow.
So it's just a crazy environment. And here, we have all kinds of initiatives going on. We're offering a $1,500 reference bonus to anybody that referral, if you will.
Hmm.
We're offering bonuses for those associates that are willing to move from being a dock associate, being trained and getting their CDL, and
Hmm.
and coming on board. And we have a lot of these initiatives going on, just trying to um, just trying to fill
These slots, and you're
these.
not
Yeah.
the only one out there, like you said.
No.
And
Oh
it's
no.
unbelievable that, with the rate of unemployment around the U.S., maybe it just comes down to qualified applicants, really. I mean, maybe that's what
Well,
it comes down to.
here's the unfortunate reality is that if somebody comes bouncing through our door looking for a CDL driving position, there's a high likelihood that he was just escorted out of somebody else's door yesterday.
Most likely. Yeah.
So
That's scary,
and
huh?
yeah, it is. It really is. And it's funny, specifically talking about drivers, but it's more than a driver issue. It's the capacity is a three as a stool with three legs. You have the drivers, most notably. You have equipment, and I'll
Right.
touch on that in a second.
Yep.
And to a lesser degree, you have brick and mortar, and there's a lot of carriers that are being forced to go into new facilities and larger facilities, and just take a look at do a good analysis of their organic capacity. And I mean, they have to make some changes in that regard too. But let's talk about the driver thing, because again, without sounding silly, I've been around for a long time, and goodness, we started hearing rumors of a driver shortage 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And nothing really ever and they started talking about hours of service and all this other stuff that was going to impact drivers, and nothing really, it really never manifested itself. And then you had um, the the great global recession, if you will, in 2007 and 2008, which kind of mitigated the impact of the driver shortage.
True.
And then as GDP started up again, it started to rear its ugly head, if you will. And then COVID hit. And then once again, there was nothing. You didn't hear anything of a driver shortage. As a matter of fact, you had drivers going elsewhere.
Right.
That's some of the situation we see now with tankers and automobile delivery drivers and stuff. They've decided to get out of to get out of the business. But the irony is the dynamic that we saw coming out of COVID as it relates to drivers was something like we've never seen before. You had carriers back in April that saw tonnage reduced 10 to 12%, and they had
Or
to from
more.
or more, right, from a survival standpoint. They had to reduce their driver force and their employee force. And what happened is that in 2 months, all of a sudden, you started seeing the year over year. In June, you started seeing year over year increases, and that just didn't stop.
No,
And the carriers just cannot match the staffing to the volume.
you're right. And let's, while we're on this subject, which happens to be, we're rolling right into the next question, actually, regarding the truck driver shortage and how this is affecting the capacity in LTL operations. But you went through attrition as one of the things. But what about the age, the average
Great point.
age of a driver
Great
right
point.
now?
Yeah.
And what is it, in the 50s, mid
It
50s, I
is,
think?
it is, it is, and that's not helping. That's not helping either. And I think to a large degree, Dan, I think that's a great point. I think that lent itself to some of the decisions that people made in the initial phase of COVID to say, you know what, the heck with it, I'm just going to get out of it. Because
Right.
think about this too, and this is why I wouldn't criticize any of our pedal drivers. Just extrapolate their COVID exposure over the course of a day. They make 12, 15 deliveries five, at least 12 to 15, 5 times a day.
Wait.
Yeah, well, a day. I mean, the pedal drivers, the P&D drivers, and then they're also making 4 or 5 pickups, and they're doing that every day. So some of these people that were reluctant to be a pedal driver, I understand it. I truly understand it. But go ahead.
Like what?
Well, there's another dynamic that we see going on right now.
With
Um,
drivers?
well, yeah, well, not necessarily with drivers, but in trying to match that staffing with the volume.
Mm.
And this is a dynamic that is largely it's driver driven from the truckload standpoint.
Oh,
Because the last I read, in fact, I think it was Sunday night, I read that there's only like one driver for every 5 truckload shipments that are out there, and it's close to 40% of the truckload tenders are being rejected. That business has to go somewhere, and the creative shippers are trying to put it on they're trying to give it to the LTL carriers. The,
always.
the LTL carriers, they don't want that. But here's the other interesting thing. Concurrent with that, as that's going on, e-commerce is exploding.
Oh,
So
big time.
now we have pressure on the top side, and then we have pressure on the bottom side there where we have customers wanting to give us a 76-pound shipment going to Mr. and Mrs. Jones at 1540 South 2nd Street. So it's just such a unique environment right now because we have to manage the volume, and at the same time we have to increase the driver situation, and it's just a truly unique environment.
I don't know about you, Jeff, but we're both grandpas, right?
Yep.
And I mean, do you want your grandson to be a truck driver?
Well, it's that's a very interesting question because you know what, um, my mindset has changed on that.
Uh-huh. Because
When
why? Because they're getting more
well,
money now? It's
they're
more of
they're
a
getting more
professional position?
abs all that plus the equipment that they're driving now.
Oh,
It's
yes,
it's
top
it's
notch.
it's not my grandpa's equipment anymore.
No, no.
Um,
There,
and
there's actual
yeah,
power steering.
oh, and you know what? Automatic transmissions and lane mitigation and all
Right.
that other stuff. So I'm not as reluctant to say that it's not an honorable um, profession. I think that heck, they're home every night.
And that's why I brought it up, because it
Yep,
is a good profession and
yep.
it should be pursued. And, kids coming out of high school or coming out of college, with a liberal arts degree that really
Yeah.
have nowhere to go. I mean,
Yep.
let's jump on that CDL and
Yeah.
make a couple of grand a month and be home every night with your family and see how that works out for you. We
Yeah.
could certainly use you.
I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It's very interesting because I had touched on equipment as being one of the
Yeah.
legs of that three. It's funny because one of the first reactions of all the carriers when the first quarter of 2020 was showing the results that it did, and everybody had a decline in tonnage, and the operating results were pretty pathetic. One of the first things they did was to modify their 2020 capex expended. They were going to they pulled back on their capex in 2020, which largely most of the carriers capex is equipment. We did the same thing. So as soon as the second quarter, the third quarter of 2020 started, and we all said, "Rutro, we need
Hmm.
tractors and we need trailers." We everybody put in
Orders.
orders,
Yep.
yeah, for the third and fourth quarter, um, and 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 then in the first quarter of this year, with business being what it is, the orders, I guarantee you, were unparalleled.
Hmm.
The trailers. I mean, Saia alone ordered almost 3,000 trailers,
Good
and
God.
and like all the other carriers, they were trying to schedule the delivery because there's a cost to putting these things in service. So you want to
Hmm.
do it when business is robust. They wanted to start getting delivery at the beginning of March, where from a seasonal standpoint, LTL tonnage begins to pick up.
Yep.
the This is the ultimate irony. Getting back to the dysfunctionality of the supply chain, we haven't gotten any yet
Oh my God.
because they can't make them. They
Yeah,
don't have the parts to make them.
I believe it. I
Excuse me.
believe it.
So
Well,
just crazy.
it is, and that's another operative issue that another common one that all the carriers are facing. Not enough equipment and receiving it on time. If anybody again had the hindsight back in March of last year, when business levels were going down, they had to know it was going to come back up again. But nobody wanted to expense that amount of money out
Well,
at the time.
I think one of the things that is truly unprecedented this time is that in trying to protect the value prop, every carrier trying to protect their value prop, I think that they've looked at managing not only uh, not only increasing the available capacity, but at the same time they had to try to manage the best they could the volume that was coming onto the truck line,
Hmm.
because they by just we weren't going to get there by simply trying to hire more people. We had to make, and now is not the time for a revenue grab, because it's, this like everything else that we have seen in our careers is cyclical, and we need to make sure we protect the value prop of the company so that we can retain our customers and protect the relationships we have with customers when this thing swings the other way.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm going to run through this next question, and let's make these answers real short because we're pressed for time. And
Okay.
you've actually got a couple of questions coming at you here, there, Jeff. What makes a successful shipper of choice, and how to become one?
Great.
Right off the top of my head, I could say become a multiple bill shipper, daily shipper.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
the number one thing.
Yep. Yep.
If you have
And
one pallet today and one pallet ready to go Wednesday, why don't you just ship them both on Wednesday if you can?
yeah, and the other thing, even at a higher level than that, is that if you're purely transactional, the carriers are going to know you're purely transactional. If you're consultative and you're buying value, that ingratiates you with the carrier, and there's a high likelihood that relationship you will become a shipper of choice. The other thing, quite honestly, and you will see that a lot of what I'm going to say harkens right back to this capacity thing right now. Now, in 5 years, if we were to have this conversation, I suspect the conversation would be completely different. But the carriers right now are looking for people that have a normal freight profile.
Right.
They don't want the excessive length stuff. They don't want the oversized stuff. They don't even want the appointment freight because it's all about velocity. They want to be able to put it on to the P&D, the delivery driver, and he goes out and he can get rid of that as quickly as he can so that he can make all his deliveries, free up his trailer, and start making pickups. So a shipper of choice has normal freight profiles.
Hmm.
We have to, as a carrier right now, we have to use every inch of that, every part of that cube utilization. Timely payment, freight that is labeled, good sound bill of ladings, use of EDI and API capabilities,
Hmm.
flexibility. This is an LTL environment. It's inherently imperfect and things go sideways.
Gotcha.
I just thought I'd say that. So we
Yeah,
have to
well
work.
said.
We have to work together to manage the customer's expectations because the customers need to be grounded in what is now current reality. And current reality is a dysfunctional pipeline.
Gotcha. Well, Jeff, we're looking at 11:57 here, and we do have one more actual question here. You
Okay,
think you can answer it real quick?
I will
Do you
try.
do you have any tips for shippers and companies to help them reduce their extra charges in LTL freight shipping?
Oh boy,
Give me 2 tips.
I'll give you 2 tips. Um, Align yourself with a carrier or a company that, even with capacity being as tight as it is, has the technology to be able to provide real-time pricing based on capacity. Because even with this,
Dynamic pricing.
even with this being as messed up as it is, there are some lanes that we need to fill. We
Gotcha.
as the other thing is, and this comes to mind, and I don't know if everybody has this capability, but maybe what you want to do is take a look at managing your customers' expectations. In the event that you have a decent amount of volume, you may want to increase your lead times because maybe instead of sending it cross country LTL, maybe you can consolidate that and do a pool distribution, which is going to seriously impact your per unit cost.
Absolutely.
But again, there's some front end work that has to be done there, managing the expectations of the customer.
For sure.
So,
Well,
but
great,
you know
great.
what? Options are limited right now.
For sure.
Options are limited.
Without a doubt. And thank you for answering that with 2 quick tips.
Yep.
I've got a couple of questions here, and a few of them alluding to autonomous driving. And here's one question. Where, here it is. Does Saia have plans to for autonomous vehicles and leveraging robotics at all of their dock operations?
Oh, I'm sorry. Does Saia
Uh,
have plans for autonomous driving? And
yes. Well, let's go with that first part. Does Saia have plans for autonomous vehicles?
we certainly do. We are not testing any of them right now, obviously, but we want to see where the industry goes with that. You want to see where the industry goes with that. I don't know that we're ever going to get to regular P&D deliveries being done autonomously.
Yeah, I can't
I
see that
think
happening in Manhattan, can you?
I think that where you're going to largely see it is going across Nebraska or some of those places, but um, we just need to see where that's going to go.
Okay. Here's a question from a good buddy of mine, Tony Sharada. What about truck driver training for convicts in the last 6 months of sentence and provide a job for them as soon as they get out?
I don't know of any program,
Me neither.
but certainly I can send that as a suggestion.
Yeah, I guess it all depends on what they were convicted for, I guess. But then again, maybe it doesn't. It all depends. It's a very interesting question, Tony.
It's a good question.
What and also again from Tony, are truckers being paid more? Of course they are now. I would assume they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if these are professional careers, paying $60,000 or more should be promoted more as a great opportunity for non-college people. So that makes sense.
Oh, I agree.
I agree 100%. Thank you, Tony, for sharing that. That was more
Yeah,
of a statement, wasn't it, Tony?
and that's a great point because one of the things that we have, and this goes to what you and I were talking about, you have to overcome the stereotypes. It's not my grandfather's truck driver. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a lot of
Exactly.
sophistication, and things are so different.
You're absolutely right. Um, Here we go. How does the LTL challenges impact the final mile models?
Interesting. Um, we are, that's business that we want to get into.
Okay.
That's business that we're looking to get into. And if we're talking about final mile, we're not talking about the distribution program. We're talking about step vans and
Correct.
to that.
I would assume. Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of the solution that we're developing. We've beta tested it in Florida, and we're doing it right now in Dallas, and we're looking to roll that out. So, and we were doing that prior to the drama with the capacity.
hmm hmm Here's a question from Roy. I too have been in the LTL industry for over 40 years.
Hmm.
Welcome to the fold there, Roy. Um, and one of the previous big three carriers, and which he was with, and have been seeing anything like the capacity issues we are experiencing. With that said, does Saia have plans on moving forward with dynamic service and surge pricing?
Yes.
Why wouldn't
Yep.
you?
Yep.
Yeah,
In
that's
fact, we've just started that with our 3PL blanket programs.
you have. Okay,
Hmm.
there you go. So yeah, so dynamic pricing. Listen, on a Monday, or actually, yeah, on a Friday, when most carriers are hurting for freight, believe it or not, that's a good day to
Yep.
drop the prices a little bit and get some more business going.
Yep.
And doing that through technology is the answer. Okay, Jeff. I think that's about wraps it up, man. You were wonderful. We really appreciate your time today. You're very
Um,
insightful. Saia is a great carrier. We certainly appreciate them, as you know. Um, any final thoughts, comments?
no, I just want to thank the GLT team for the invitation, and invite my any questions or anything, Dan. People get in contact with you, and they can shoot them to me, because I'm not going to try to spell my last name on this thing here. So
with your email?
yeah, every everybody stay well, and appreciate what everybody does. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
Take
Appreciate your
care.
time, man.
Yep.
Have a
See you
great
later.
day.
You
See
too.
ya.
Bye now.